A little bit. I've read parts of Father Clooney's book here with great interest, and studied otherwise, and I've probably been here for all 20 visits. So I know that Jesuits, part of the culture is that you're genuinely interested to learn about others' faith, and it's with respect and intellectual seriousness. It's not just a curiosity, it's certainly not to find fault. You're really genuinely interested to understand how other people worship God. And it's more than just an intellectual curiosity. You actually believe, if I'm correct, that there's something to be gained, something to be benefited in doing this. And from what I can understand from the book, Father Clooney is, as they say in New York, walked this talk, and you've done that basically. He spent like 50 years plus minus in India associating with Hinduism and people like that. So, but simultaneously we can understand that you're very much rooted in your own theological framework, and of course, we totally respect that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do our class like we normally do it, and speak a little bit about what we're doing in general after that, and then open it up for questions, which I know you generally like to ask questions, and we welcome that as well. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 7, Text 13. But actually, there's a couple verses that didn't have explanations, so I'll just chant those myself out loud, and then we'll do 13 together. This is text 11. Bhavastavaya kṛta nasaknod anugraha Utkantya bashpa kalaya samparitam sutam smaram. Translation. King Dakṣa wanted to offer prayers to Lord Śiva, but as he remembered the ill-fated death of his daughter Satī, his eyes filled with tears, and in bereavement his voice choked up and he could not say anything. Kṛtat samstabya cha manaha prema vivalitaha sudhi sasamsa nirvyaklikena bhavenaisham prajapati. At this time, King Dakṣa, afflicted by love and affection, was very much awakened to his real senses. With great endeavor, he pacified his mind, checked his feelings, and with pure consciousness began to offer prayers to Lord Śiva. And then we can do this one together. Dakṣa uvāca. Bhūyān anugraha bhavatā kṛto me. Bhūyān anugraha bhavatā kṛto me. daṇḍas tvayā mayi bhṛto yadapi pralabdhaḥ. daṇḍas tvayā mayi bhṛto yadapi pralabdhaḥ. Na brahma-bandhuṣu tubhyaṁ bhagavann avajñā. Na brahma-bandhuṣu tubhyaṁ bhagavann avajñā. Tubhyaṁ hareś kuta dhṛta-vrateṣu. Tubhyaṁ hareś kuta dhṛta-vrateṣu. Dakṣa uvāca. Bhūyān anugraha bhavatā kṛto me. daṇḍas tvayā mayi bhṛto yadapi pralabdhaḥ. na brahma-bandhuṣu cavam bhagavann avajñā tubhyaṁ hareś kuta eva dhṛta-vrateṣu. Others, please. Vaishnavis. Dakṣa. Father Clooney, you want to chant it? No, that's it. Any of our guests want to take a shot at it? It's all phonetic. It's actually okay. Dakṣa, King Dakṣa, uvāca said, bhūyān, very great, anugraha, favor, aho, alas, bhavatā, by you, kṛtaḥ, done, mayi, upon me, daṇḍaḥ, punishment, tvayā, by you, mayi, unto me, bhṛtaḥ, done, yat api, although, pralabdhaḥ, defeated, na, neither, brahma-bandhuṣu, unto an unqualified Brahmin, cha, also, vam, both of you, bhagavann, my Lord, avajñā, negligence, tubhyaṁ, of you, hareś, of Lord Viṣṇu, Kutaha, where? Eva, certainly. dhṛta-vrateṣu, one who is engaged in the performance of sacrifice. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. King Dakṣa said, "My dear Lord Śiva, I committed a great offense against you, but you are so kind that instead of withdrawing your mercy, you have done me a great favor by punishing me. You and Lord Viṣṇu never neglect even useless, unqualified brahmanas. Why then should you neglect me, who am engaged in performing sacrifices?" Purport. Although Dakṣa felt defeated, he knew that his punishment was simply the great mercy of Lord Śiva. He remembered that Lord Śiva and Lord Viṣṇu are never neglectful of the brahmanas, even though the brahmanas are sometimes unqualified. According to Vedic civilization, a descendant of a brahmana family should never be heavily punished. This was exemplified in Arjuna's treatment of Ashvatthama. Ashvatthama was the son of a great brahmana, Dronacharya, and in spite of his having committed the great offense of killing the sleeping sons of the Pandavas, for which he was condemned even by Lord Krishna, Arjuna excused him by not killing him because he happened to be the son of a brahmana. The word brahma-bandhuṣu used here is significant. Brahma-bandhu means a person who is born of a brahmana father, but whose activities are not up to the standard of the brahmanas. Such a person is not a brahmana, but a brahma-bandhu. Dakṣa proved himself to be a brahma-bandhu. He was born of a great brahmana father, Lord Brahma, but his treatment of Lord Śiva was not exactly Brahminical. Therefore, he admitted that he was not a perfect brahmana. Lord Śiva and Lord Viṣṇu, however, are affectionate even to an imperfect brahmana. Lord Śiva punished Dakṣa, not as one does his enemy. Rather, he punished Dakṣa just to bring him to his senses, so that he would know that he had done wrong. Dakṣa could understand this. He acknowledged the great mercy of Lord Krishna and Lord Śiva towards the fallen brahmanas, including even himself. Although he was fallen, his vow was to execute the sacrifice, as is the duty of brahmanas, and thus he began his prayers to Lord Śiva. Om Ganatamaram Dashajanam Jana Shalakaya Chaksha Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamupakadamayam Didati Swapadamtikam. That's offering some prayers to our spiritual masters. Okay, so we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's considered a literary incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We study scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam because our philosophy tells us that when you read these books, you're actually connecting. They're not different from Krishna. You're connecting. You're actually associating with Krishna when you study the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita, for instance. And the result of that is that our consciousness becomes purified. And when our consciousness is completely purified, then we can understand what our original identity is, our original spiritual identity, and what our eternal spiritual relationship is with Krishna. So that's why we study the Srimad Bhagavatam. And somebody might ask the question, well, okay, if I mentioned about our original spiritual identity and our eternal relationship with Krishna, how is it that we're here in the first place? I'll just read a little excerpt from a lecture our spiritual master gave where he addresses that exact question. So a devotee asked our spiritual master, in the Srimad Bhagavatam it says that Krishna does not want us to come to this world become under the external energies, so why are we here? So Srila Prabhupada's answer was, you forced Krishna to allow you to come, just like sometimes a child forces the father. Father says, "My dear son, do not do this, do not go there." But the son insists, "Father, I must go, I must go." Father says, "All right, you go at your risk, that's all, and you suffer. What can be done? Because you are the son of God. God has got independence, Almighty, therefore you have acquired the quality of your Father. You have got little independence. So God does not interfere with your little independence. If you persist that I must go and enjoy independently, God says, all right, you can go. This is the position. You have to take sanction. That is a fact. But when you persist, God sanctions. So, to just make it a little bit clearer, originally we were in the spiritual world with Krishna and an eternal loving relationship. And but we, as I mentioned here, we have a little bit of free will, a little bit of independence. And it's because if we're misusing our little bit of free will or independence, we've come here to the material world. It's an opportunity for actually us to learn that we can't be happy trying to enjoy separately from the enjoyment of Krishna. We're meant to serve Krishna. We're meant to God. We're meant to give pleasure to Krishna or God. And when we're willing to do that, we're in the spiritual world in some loving relationship with Krishna. And the moment we're not willing to do that anymore, Krishna makes an arrangement to allow us to come here to this material world for educational purposes ultimately, to learn that it doesn't work. We can't be happy in any other way. So here we are in the material world, and this whole program here we're trying to reconnect. We're trying to revive our awareness of our original nature, which is completely spiritual, and understand again about our eternal relationship with God. Now, to relate that all to today's verse, it's talking about how the Brahmins are basically given sort of preferential treatment, even when they commit some mistake, even when they do wrong. They're not punished severely. The understanding behind that is something like this, and it relates to what you saw when you first came in. We did a ceremony called Guru Puja. Okay? We're worshiping the spiritual master. And the reason why we worship the spiritual master is stated, something you weren't here for. Every morning we have our services begin at 4:30 in the morning. That's the first official service. It's called Mangal Arti, which means auspicious greeting. And every day at Mangal Arti we recite a particular prayer. Or we sing a song. It's called Guru Vastika, 8 prayers glorifying the spiritual master. So the translation of the first prayer, it goes like this. It says, the spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master, who is an ocean of auspicious qualities. So, it's one of the core ideas, essential ideas of Krishna consciousness, that we don't approach Krishna directly. We need the help of a bona fide spiritual master in order to, reconnect with Krishna. So the Brahmins are kind of not exactly in that category. I mean, that's the explanation for why the Brahmins are shown this preferential treatment, because they're beings supposed to be personalities who are elevated in spiritual knowledge and who are able to help us reconnect with Krishna. So, even they kind of slip up on occasion. It's meant to be overlooked because of their overall situation. So the spiritual master is way more elevated than just an ordinary Brahmin. It's also, later on in that same prayer, it's described about the spiritual master. It says, this is a translation, the spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord, because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master, who is a bona fide representative of Krishna. And the song or the prayer concludes by saying, by the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. So, yeah, it's a very important point that, going back to that first translation, he's delivering us from the blazing fire of material existence. So, there's the word samsara in Sanskrit. It means the cycle of birth and death. So that's our understanding that, originally we're in the spiritual world with Krishna, with God. Due to misuse of our free will, we've come here to the material world, and we're in what's called samsara, a cycle of birth and death. And the idea is to get out of this cycle of birth and death and to go back and be with Krishna again, to be reinstated in our eternal constitutional position of loving service to Krishna. So the spiritual master helps us to do that. Just one point, I brought these, because I'm mentioning, cycle of birth and death. It's obviously implying we believe in reincarnation. At the time of death, the soul goes on, accepts another body. The body we accept in our next lifetime is determined by the quality of our activities during this lifetime. If at the time of death we're in pure devotional consciousness, then our next body will be our original body. We'll experience our original body, our original spiritual body. But if it's something less than that, other than that, then we'll have to take another material body. And that's called reincarnation. These are books about reincarnation, and I'm going to read all of them to you. Now, there a lot of information here about children who remember their past life. In other words, it's more than just like an idea that's out there. There's actually some empiric evidence to support the idea of reincarnation. It's something that's been studied here in America, for instance, since early 60s, mid-60s, like that, initially by a man named Ian Stevenson, and then when he left, another man became his successor, Jim Tucker. And what they do is they've studied the lives of children, cases where children, when they first start speaking, they describe, or they start making statements to the effect that, this is not my actual home, you're not my actual parents, why am I don't have to eat this kind of food, I'm used to eating this kind, they also, statements indicating they are identifying as another personality. And it's quite remarkable. Some of them have, they make these statements, and to the point where the parents just, go, okay, and like, for instance, I'll give you an example. There's many cases where the child is taken to the place where they claim they used to live, and they'll get out and they'll lead the way to the house where they used to live, and then they'll identify, their former husband, mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother, sister. They'll identify all sorts of people correctly. And they have all sorts of knowledge, information that there's no way they could have got it, because they're just toddlers basically at that point. And most of these cases were investigated before they had the internet or anything like. They couldn't read anyway. So they're presenting this information, and it's verified. And so these scientists who have been studying this phenomena for the last, I guess it's 60 years almost now, they come to the conclusion that the best explanation is reincarnation, that these kids are actually remembering a past life. Anyway, so these books are kind of by different people, and they're all talking about that same thing, kind of examining it from different angles of vision. I'm convinced, to be honest with you. I mean, for me, it's more than that. The bhagavatā, our scriptures say, reincarnation is a fact, but I feel like there's good quality empiric evidence that supports that. So that's, a powerful thing in my mind, helping me to be more convinced of this. It doesn't prove our worldview by any stretch of the imagination, but it is evidence in support of it. So that's that. So the spiritual master is a very important person in helping us to get out of this cycle of birth and death, and hopefully by the end of this lifetime, go back to the spiritual world. When we go back to the spiritual world, we don't have to come back here again. We can, because just like, you have that free will, it's always there, but it's unlikely that we're going to, come back here again. It's just like our spiritual master give the example, when you learn from experience that fire will burn, you don't need to learn a second time. Learning it once is generally sufficient for a person. He's not going to stick his hand in the fire a second time you've learned it. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, and it's the general understanding that when we get out of here and go back to the spiritual world, we'll be eternally with Krishna or God again. So probably for most of you, except for Father Clooney, and I forget the name of the gentleman who's your host, at the monastery there. I forgot your name, but Andrew, right. Hey, good to see you again. Yeah, so with the exception of both of you, probably the forms on the altar are probably kind of, new for you. So these are like, the example, the analogy that's given is just like you have a post office box, a mailbox, The post office is the main post office, the central post office is in one particular place. But to make it convenient for people to mail their letters, the post office puts mailboxes, all over the neighborhoods. And that mailbox is putting your letter in the mailbox is as good as taking your letter right to the central post office in downtown Los Angeles or wherever it may be. See? It's the same thing. It's why? Because it's like an authorized, empowered box. You put your letter in that mailbox, and at some point, somebody comes around and collects all that mail, takes it to the central post office, and off it goes. So same thing. These are authorized forms. God, to make it more convenient, just like the post office. Why are they doing that? To make it convenient for their customers. So in the same way, Krishna or God, to make it convenient for us to worship Him, He has made this arrangement whereby He accepts worship through these forms. They're not idols. We don't, consider them idols or just statues. We consider them actually that Krishna is present in the form. There is a qualification. If you have to relate to them in a certain way. There's a process for worshiping. We call them deities. There's a process for worshiping the deities. But if one follows the rules and regulations and worships the deities according to the those rules and regulations with the proper understanding, then they can experience how Krishna is present in the form of the deity, and you experience some reciprocation. Same thing with the Bhagavatam too. When you study the Bhagavatam with the right attitude and you're really kind of paying attention to it, you can experience how Krishna is present in the Bhagavatam. And also with the chanting. We were doing, at least we were chanting. I don't know if you all were joining in with us, but the chanting is another form of connecting with Krishna. Our philosophy is that the holy name of Krishna is identical with Krishna. And when one chants the holy name without offense, one experiences love of Godhead. Every morning after we have that first service I was referring to earlier, about that takes place at 4:30, we recite what's called the 10 offenses. I'm actually the person who leads the recitation of the 10 offenses, and there's a Sanskrit mantra that I chant every morning before we all recite the offenses, and it goes, Bahu janma kariyari shravana kirtana tabhutana paya Krishna pade premadana. It means if one is infested with the 10 offenses while chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, despite his endeavor to chant the holy name for many births, he will not get the love of Godhead, which is the ultimate goal of this chanting. So in other words, the ultimate goal of the chanting is love of Godhead, is to be reawakened to your experience of your eternal loving relationship with Krishna. So it has that potential. That potential's there, but you have to avoid those offenses. If you're committing the offenses while you're chanting, that desired experience won't be there. Similarly, if you're committing offenses in your study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that desired experience won't be there. Similarly for the deities, it has to be performed without offense, and then one can actually experience the presence of Krishna in the form of the deity, in the form of the Bhagavatam, in the form of the holy name, and also the form of the spiritual master, who's also, as I read earlier, considered a representative of Krishna. I'll mention this now because it'll probably come up in the questions, so I'll save somebody the trouble of having to answer the question. Our understanding of Jesus Christ is that he is the Son of God. I mean, last year in preparation for this class, I did some research on our base, knowledge base, and I extracted all sorts of different statements our spiritual master made about Jesus Christ. The basic understanding is this, that he is the Son of God, but he's a separate person. Jesus and Krishna are two separate people, but we will show the same respect to Jesus Christ as we would, same honor and respect to Jesus Christ as we would show to Krishna. That's the tradition. He's a bona fide spiritual master. And as I read here, the bona fide spiritual master, I'll read it again actually, it's important. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord. Why? Because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. And this is acknowledged in all the revealed scriptures and followed by all the authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is the representative of Krishna, or God. So that's our understanding of Jesus Christ, that he was a bona fide spiritual master, representative of Krishna. And we offer him the same respect as we would offer to Krishna. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Does anybody have any question? I'm anticipating, because I know it's also part of the Jesuit culture. They like to think about things and ask, good questions, so I'm leaving time for that purpose. Does anybody have any question about, yeah? Okay. Anything from our guests? Well, I'll give you a chance to, okay, we have somebody start the ball rolling over there. Yeah.
Will everyone eventually be reunited with Krishna, or could there be kind of an endless cycle of reincarnation or something like a hell?
Yeah, thank you. This is what we want, just like this kind of, good question. The potential is there to be reunited with Krishna, but you know that expression, it takes two to tango? Yeah, it's not automatic. The living entity has to make a decision. We have to make a decision that we're willing to live in compliance, in submission, in alignment with the will of Krishna. We at some point we have to make a decision that we're willing to do that, and then the ball gets rolling, so to speak. But if a living entity chooses to repeatedly misuses free will, reject spiritual light, so to speak, then yeah, you can stay in this material world for, well, I won't say forever, but practically speaking, forever. The ball's in our court. You see, the ball is in our court. The opportunity is there to go back to the spiritual world, but the living entity has to want to do that. So that kind of answers the question, basically, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, over there. No eternal damnation. That was the thought we don't have eternal damnation. There's no point when the door is closed. That's it. You've blown it too often, too many times, too badly, too often. No, that's it. No, we don't have that. We don't have eternal damnation, but you can be here in the material world for a long, long time until you make the decision to try to, live your life in submission, compliance, harmony, like that, with the will of Krishna, or God. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. So it's my understanding that Krishna is the 8th incarnation of Viṣṇu, if I'm not mistaken. And I think for us, I think one of the greatest similarities between Christ and Krishna is how, sort of Krishna came to this earth and, was born, and, very similarities where he, as a baby, had to sort of escape prison, same thing as Jesus having to escape Herod. And so I was wondering if there's anything, we would call sort of our practice of Jesus coming down to on this earth, the incarnation. And so I was wondering, what sort of significance does the fact that Krishna came to this world and, was a man who was interacting with the world, what that sort of plays in y'all's spirituality, as well as if you can maybe tell us any stories about Krishna, and yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, okay. So you presented sort of a traditional Hindu understanding of Krishna, the eighth incarnation. Our understanding as Vaishnavas, we don't actually consider ourselves Hindu. There's a lot of similarities between quote-unquote Hinduism and Vaishnav, but there are some very significant differences in the philosophy. So our understanding is Ete Champsa Kala Krishna, Krishnas tu bhagavann swayam, that Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, for us, our understanding is that Viṣṇu is an expansion of Krishna. Krishna is the original, and Viṣṇu is an expansion, a later expansion. Okay, that's part one. Part two of your question was why? Why is Krishna coming here? That's explained in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna himself. In the 4th chapter, he says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhutanam adharmasya tadatmanam shrujami aham. Whenever and wherever there's a decline in religion and a predominant rise of irreligiosity, at that time I descend myself. Paritranaya sadunam vinishaya chadushkatam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavama yuge yuge. In order to deliver the pious, annihilate the miscreants, and reestablish principles of religion, I invent myself millennium after millennium. So that's Krishna's mission. Basically, he's coming to kind of, try to set things right again. That's the purpose. That makes sense? Yeah. Okay. One of our children here has a question. Danya. Let's give her a chance.
So
That's a good way to start, Danya. Okay, go ahead.
thank you for your nice class. So I was wondering, how many incarnations of Krishna is there?
Oh, the incarnations of Krishna are innumerable. In the Bhagavatam, in the 1st canto, it describes how the incarnations are like the waves on the ocean. They just keep coming. You can't count them. There's a certain number of very, very significant ones that are mentioned in the Bhagavatam. There's different lists. There's the Das avatars. There's that picture in the Bhagavad Gita, and there's a chapter in the Bhagavatam, Krishna, the source of all incarnations, which lists about 25. But it mentions there that ultimately the number of incarnations is innumerable, and they're all coming for that same purpose. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah, over there. Please feel free to ask anything. We don't get embarrassed. My answers might not be the best, but anyway, we'll take any question. Yeah.
You talked about the 10 offenses that restrict you from feeling the love of Krishna, feeling that full love. What are those 10 offenses, and how do you overcome them?
Okay, wow, that's a great question. So first, to blaspheme devotees who have dedicated their lives to propagating the holy name of the Lord. That's the first offense. So I'll go through them, and then to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the... number 2 is... to consider the names of demigods like Lord Śiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the holy name of Lord Krishna. 3 is to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4 is to blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature in pursuance of the Vedic version. 5 is to consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6 is to give some mundane interpretation on the holy names of the Lord. 7 is to commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. 8 is to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as an auspicious ritualistic activities like recommended in the Vedas for just elevation in the material life. 9 is to instruct the faithless person about the holy name. And 10 is to not have complete faith in the chanting and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions to the contrary. And well, that's 10 actually, but there's another one we say, it's also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. In other words, you got to work at having the right attitude. It's not a mechanical thing. It's a relationship. It's not mechanical, you see? I mean, there is like a certain systematic activity that we're performing, but it's meant to be done with the proper attitude. And Krishna is reciprocating with that. So to answer the second part of your question is that you got to work at it. I mean, it's obvious how not to blaspheme devotees. It's obvious how not to be inattentive while chanting. It's something you have to work at. Performing the chanting with the right attitude, and Krishna's in our heart, and he can understand when we're trying to do that, and when he's pleased by our efforts to chant, trying to avoid those 10 offenses, in other words, trying to do it with the right attitude, he reciprocates. And that's described very nicely in the Bhagavad Gita in the 10th chapter. There's 4 verses in that 10th chapter that our spiritual master would refer to as the 4 most important verses of the Bhagavad Gita. So 2 of them are, Krishna says, to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. Out of compassion for them, I, who am dwelling within their heart, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. See? So the idea being that he's in our heart, and he's aware of everything, and he's also aware of when we're sincerely trying to engage favorably in devotional service, avoiding the offenses, and when he can understand that, he reciprocates. And that reciprocation takes the form of him as nasyami atmabhavasha. He destroys with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. He allows us to become free from illusion, free from the illusion of identifying this material body as all we are and who we are. And you actually start understanding your actual spiritual identity. It can happen like that, but generally it's a process. It plays out over time. There's another verse in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, when one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience or illusion is destroyed, then one's knowledge will reveal everything, just like the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So we've all seen sunrises. It doesn't happen from one moment to the next. It happens over 48 minutes. The first light in the sky, and then 48 minutes later, the sun pops up over the horizon. It's like, generally it's like that. It's a process. But, I mean, Krishna's omnipotent. He could have it happen any way he wants to, but that's the idea, that when you try to chant, avoiding these 10 offenses, Krishna can understand that that's what's going on, and at some point he reciprocates, and you're encouraged. You experience what we call a higher taste, for chanting. You'll be doing the chanting, and you're experiencing pleasure. It's not mechanical. You're actually experiencing pleasure just by producing that sound vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's kind of inconceivable how can just producing some sounds, allow you to experience pleasure, but it happens. It happens, It's once again, it's not guaranteed. It's not like once you experience it once, that you'll experience it, every time you say Hare Krishna. No. It's a relationship. Krishna is awarding it, and it can be there and not be there. But when one gets sufficiently elevated in devotional service, there's different stages of bhakti or devotional service, and when one gets into the higher stages, it's there more consistently. And at the highest levels of devotional service, it's there permanently. But in the initial stages, it can kind of come and go, like that. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Anybody else? Anything? Yep.
So it's been really helpful to understand the right ways of relating with Krishna, and kind of like mystical element, it sounds like, and then turning to more relationship with other people. What are some of the more distinctive moral or ethical precepts that are important with others around us?
All right. Okay. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the chapter 4, Krishna says, if I can remember it, Yajgatvar napunar mohan evam yasyashi pandava yena bhutani yasheshani drakshashatmani atome. He explains that all the living entities are his parts and parcels. So we're all part of the same spiritual family, not just human beings. We believe that there's a soul. For sure there's souls in the body of a human being, but there's souls in the body of animals, there's souls in the body of anything that's alive has a soul. Okay? So all souls are part and parcel of Krishna. We're part of Krishna's spiritual family. There's another verse in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Mamaivam so jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manak sastrani indriyani prakriti stani karshati, that the living entities are my fragmental parts and parcels, and they're struggling hard with the six senses, which includes the mind here in this material world. But the idea is we're all part of Krishna's spiritual family. And the most significant thing is to try to help people come closer to Krishna, come closer to God. This is an example that I guess I think I thought of, but anyway, imagine this. Okay, you take this one, okay, and take it as that's Krishna. That represents Krishna. Here's a living entity. Here's a living entity. Here's a living entity. Here's one. Okay. So imagine that these living entities are moving in towards the microphone. So what can be said of the relationship between these living entities to each other? I mean, they're all moving closer to the microphone here. And what could you say about their relationship to each other as they move closer to the microphone?
It's like they become closer by way of Krishna.
Yeah, so as we move closer to Krishna or God or Jesus like that, as you really, make progress in your spiritual life, you become closer to other living entities who are doing the same thing. You're automatically, as you become closer to the Krishna, the center, you're becoming closer to each other. So that's an important point. But in general, we try to treat everybody with love, with respect. Why? There's a nice verse in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It says, Vijavanaya sampane brahmani gavihastini sune chaiva swapake cha pandita samadarshana. The humble sage, or the elevated transcendentalist, he sees with equal vision a learned, gentle Brahmin. We heard about Brahmins in today's lesson. The learned, gentle Brahmin, a cow, a dog eater, and what else? An elephant, like that. In other words, somebody who's spiritually elevated, he's seeing the person not in terms of their body, but he's seeing them. He can see the body, he's not here, but he sees, no, this is a spirit soul. This is a spirit soul who, as a result of misusing its free will, has wound up in this body of a dog, or an elephant, or a cow, or a dog eater. It means it's a very low-class human being. What can I do to help this person? What can I do to help this person progress in their spiritual life? You see, that's his meditation. So that should be our meditation. Our meditation should be, how can I help this person get closer to God, get closer to Krishna, get closer to Jesus, like that. That's the most important element of relating to other people. One of our understandings is that one incarnation, we were asking about incarnations, well, there was an incarnation of Krishna who was present here on earth as recently as 500 years ago. And his name was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is an incarnation of Krishna, but he was playing the role of a devotee. Krishna likes to play different roles. He's a very, not a boring personality. He likes to accept different roles. So in his role of a devotee, one of his most important instructions that he gave, he said, Yade deke tade kaha Krishna upadesh, amada agyaya guduhana tada edesh. That wherever you go, he was instructing his followers and people in general, wherever you go, whoever you meet, tell them about Krishna. Meaning explain to them this philosophy. that you're not the body, you're actually an eternal spiritual being. You have an eternal spiritual relationship with Krishna, with God. This human form of life is the opportunity. This is it. This is your chance. This is your opportunity to revive that, awareness of that relationship, to experience, to reconnect. Take advantage of it. That's what Lord Chaitanya's main instruction was. That everybody, he said, on my order, you become a guru. Somebody who teaches and deliver the people. Wherever you go, whoever you meet, it's appropriate. Tell them about Krishna. Try to enlighten them spiritually. Try to elevate them spiritually. So that's our understanding. That's the most important thing a person could do in relating to other people. Try to do something to help them advance in spiritual life. Is that? Yeah.
You mentioned about the principles for worshipping the deities.
Yeah.
So I was just hoping if you could elaborate on
Elaborate?
that.
Well, our spiritual master said, on one occasion, he said, if I told you all the rules and regulations involved in worshipping the deities, you would faint. Right? And Father Clooney smiled when I said that, because he spent time in India, so he's probably aware of it. But Prabhupada, kind of for our convenience, or to make it accessible for us, he kind of narrowed it down. He said deity worship means cleanliness and punctuality. Those two things, do it nicely, and it means be really clean, and things are supposed to be done on time. So to just kind of, if I had to narrow it down to a couple basic things. Another very important point is, it's related, but not exactly right on the point, but the most important instruction in all the Vedic literatures goes like this. It says, smartavyam satatam vishnur, na smartavir na jatusit, sarve vede na serasyur etayor eva kinkara. Always remember Vishnu or Krishna and never forget him. This is the sum and substance of all the rules and regulations. So that's an important thing. That when we're doing something like deity worship, once again, our mind shouldn't be on the NBA playoffs or something like that. You should be thinking about Krishna, thinking about the philosophy, thinking devotionally, and doing it very cleanly and punctually like that. So that's, an important point. Yeah? Anybody else? Anything? Yeah? Okay, good. We've got a few more minutes. Thank you for your questions, by the way. I was hoping we'd get questions like this, and I'm very happy we're getting them. Good. Yeah?
Great. So as we go around, we're visiting various sites here in Culver City and beyond. We'd like to ask those who are leading the worship, how is it that they encountered their religious practice and group, and how is it that they decided to be of service in the way that you're doing? So I would love to hear a personal story, whatever time you have time for and want to share.
Sure. I'll give you the 30-second version, basically, and then maybe when we're sitting in the restaurant there, I'll give you the long version if you like. But I just kept bumping into Hare Krishnas. I'm from, like Father Clooney, New York City. I'm from the Bronx. I hope that's okay. Yeah. You're from Brooklyn, right? Yeah. So I used to, I just was going here and there with my friends, and I'd bump into people who are already devotees, and they'd give me books about Krishna consciousness, and I read the books, and I liked what I read. It hit my heart. It was more than just intellectual. I felt like, whoa, this is something special here. I mean, I've read a lot of books, and I love reading books, but these books hit me in a way that other books had not. And so eventually I went to the temple, and I liked what I saw, I liked what I heard, I liked what I ate. The food was good too. And I just decided, well, I guess I'll give this. There was a turning point. The first time I went to the temple, the person who was giving the lecture, he was making the point that, there's so many different spiritual products out there, or religious products out there, and generally the general tendency is for each one to claim that they're the best, or the only one, or the best, like that. So he said, I'm not going to add to your confusion by doing that tonight. He said, the Bhagavatam offers a criterion by which you can judge for yourself and that criterion is, and he quoted a Sanskrit verse, Vaipum samparo dhammo yato bhaktir hoksajay ahoitakiya pratyata yayatma suprasidit. He said that religion, the way he translated it was, that religion is first class, which awakens in its followers unmotivated, ecstatic love for God. And when he said that, I thought to myself, yeah, that's it. That's it. That's what I want. Unmotivated, ecstatic love for God. That was thought one. Then thought two was, if these people are, together enough to help me, very simply and clearly understand that, maybe they could also help me make progress towards achieving that. And then thought three was, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to join. I didn't have any timeline in my head at that moment, Actually, I wound up joining the next day. But it was thought 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's it. These people are making it obvious, helping me understand that, and I'm going to do this. So that's how I joined. And then the next day I went home, and I was marching around my room when I got home, which was like, by that time, 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I was chanting the Hare Krishna mantra as I'd heard him chanting in the temple room. And I was experiencing a higher taste, as I mentioned before. It's Krishna's mercy. I was just a brand new person. But it was like, it's just like when you join the military or something, they give you a sign-on bonus. Even before you ever done anything, you've got $10,000 in your bank. That's the way I understand it. Krishna would just give me some mercy. I was marching around my room chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. As I said, I'll tell you the rest of it in the restaurant there, but I had a good experience, and I just wound up, going back to the temple very early the next morning, and by the mercy of the devotees of Srila Prabhupada, they allowed me to stay, and and I just stayed from that point onwards. There's more to it, but I'll tell you afterwards. Anybody else? Anything? Yeah.
When you go through a season of struggle and hardship, how do you relate to Krishna and the people around you for support?
Okay, you have to look at it as an opportunity to get purified. We can't expect that spiritual life is going to be a cakewalk. We're just like, to give an analogy, imagine if you're like somebody's a prisoner, a criminal in a prison, and they're in there because they committed some pretty heavy-duty crimes. And then they want to get out. So you can't expect that it's going to be that you just say, okay, I realized I did the wrong thing, you can let me out now. Oh yeah, sure. No, it doesn't work like that. That person has to prove themselves. So we have to prove ourselves, There's going to be tests. That's it. That's the word I was looking for. There's going to be tests. And we could understand things like that this is a test. Krishna is testing to see if I'm really sincere, if I'm really determined. And, it's an opportunity to demonstrate to Krishna by continuing your service. Don't get bewildered. Don't get discouraged. Don't give up. Just with sincerity and determination and patience and enthusiasm, continue and try to pass that test. And then, and Krishna will reciprocate when you finally do. So that's, I think, the way to view it. Just think of it as, due to my past sinful activities, I probably should be experiencing a lot more difficulty than what I'm experiencing. Krishna's, or God has made it, minimized it, but that's another way of thinking. But it's in general, it's a test. Just persevere. Persevere, don't get discouraged, and you'll work through it. It doesn't last forever. Yep. Anybody else? Anything? Yep.
So my understanding is that like some Hindu or Vedic traditions take the view that like the whole material world is an illusion, and like even ourselves or having a distinct self is an illusion, and that when someone exits samsara, like there's kind of like an annihilation of self and kind of a reunion with the like eternal true self. But in your tradition, it's a little different, right? That there's still that like we would have spiritual bodies when we exit samsara, and we're like distinct persons. Is that correct?
So what was the last thing you said? Spiritual bodies
and that we're distinct persons from Krishna.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Yeah, Krishna says in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, "Natu evaham jatu nasam natwam neme janadipa nacharvanad bhavishnyama sarve vayamatakparam." He's speaking to Arjuna, his friend and disciple. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So right, we're eternal individuals. We believe, the material world is illusion in the sense that it's temporary. It's not like a figment of our imagination or something like that. It's temporary. That's our idea. That not that. And then when you achieve liberation, it's not like you just merge with the Brahman. No, for us, liberation means swarupena vyavastiti, that you're reinstated in your eternal constitutional position as a servant of Krishna. So individuality is eternal. The material world is illusion in the sense that it's temporary, but it's real at the same time. Does that make sense? It's different from, there's different schools of thought within, Vedic philosophy, and we are not, that's what you were describing, it's called Advaita Vedanta, but we're not Advaita Vedantists. We have a different philosophical school of thought. Yeah, anybody else have anything? Okay, let's wrap it up now, because this is what we usually stop, and everybody, all the guests, please just will go to the restaurant and for breakfast, and we can continue our conversation there. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.